Welcome, friends, listeners, to American Freedom Radio. You're with Santos Bonacci, and it's a privilege and an honour to be with you just days before the birthday of the universe, which, of course, we all know is the 21st of December 2012. And the whole universe will celebrate this day, this birthday, and here we are. It's upon us. I've been speaking about this for years, looking toward this moment for years, and it's upon us, folks. So, rejoice. Today is the 19th of December here in Australia, Wednesday the 19th, 2 p.m. in the afternoon, and I look outside my house and it's blustering wind. It's incredibly strange summer weather. The wind is just fierce, and there's clouds overhead. It looks like a real sort of a chemtrail-filled sky, and it's just unusual weather. That's all I can say. It's pretty ominous. It's very weird. But to share with you today, I have a very special guest from Australia, and today's guest has been very important to me in my consciousness, awareness, and way before I ever even thought of making a presentation and putting it on, publishing it on the internet. Today's guest has contributed to my awakening and to many, many, many people around the world. And it's such an honour, just days before the great shift, to have my good friend with me today from Australia, Max Igan. Welcome, Max.
Thanks for having me on the show, Santos. That was a very wonderful introduction too. Thank you. Yeah, it's amazing we're here, mate. 2012, amazing. 21st of December 2012, almost upon us.
Well, you've focused on this day a lot longer than me, of course, so you can really, really rejoice in a deeper, more profound way, because you've been pointing people to this and to the consciousness and the better day that we all know will arise eventually. It must.
Well, it has to. It certainly can't go on the way it is. But it's amazing that it's here, just around the corner, And we've had some pretty incredible weather up here where I am as well on the East Coast. We had a couple of days where the skies were just very strange colours. The sun was a very strange colour when it came up. And the skies look very, very chemtrail-y. There's no clouds, but there's a really, really hazy sort of a sky. And last night we had a spectacular electrical storm that went from probably up around Bundaberg, where my son lives, because he experienced it, and way down to probably around Coffs Harbour or even south of Coffs Harbour. I don't know how far down it went, but really, really spectacular electrical storm. Not a lot of rain, a little bit, but really, really unusual storm. So who knows? Anybody's guess is what's around the corner.
Yeah, it's like a lot of nitrogen in the air, isn't it? It's like it's electrically charging up and building up somehow.
Well, yeah, you got to wonder whether it's related to the chemtrails. I don't know. Like the electrical storm last night was not like one that I've seen before. It was amazing, like huge forks of lightning right across the sky. Absolutely spectacular, and really deep ground rumbling booms, almost like bombs going off. So it was a full-on storm.
And a lot of people have brought to my attention. My brother just the other day said that he was watching mainstream TV, Channel 7, I think, and they were casually just talking about the consciousness shift of 21st December 2012. And he says to me, I was just watching TV, just the free-to-air TV, and they're having a whole conversation about what's going to happen on the 21st of December, and it's pretty much along the lines of what the Mayans are teaching and what the prophecies are telling. So that's interesting.
Well, it's interesting that the mainstream would be talking about it. I mean, I don't know what to expect. Maybe it'll be just another Friday followed by just another Saturday. I think the shift in consciousness we're seeing is a rise of awareness, and I think it'll probably be a gradual thing. I don't think anything's just sort of go off like a switch when that day gets here, but I think it does signify an escalation in the consciousness. And by that, what I mean is a rise in awareness. People are beginning to become aware of what we're swimming in, and they're beginning to become aware of what the remedy to what we're swimming in is. And that remedy is to shine your own light, to find your own personal power, and to realise what's going on here, to realise that we're all in this together. Get this global unity happening that we all want and we all expect. Get rid of all the barriers that have been put there, and just an awakening to the system. I mean, we've got this fictional system which has been used to divide us and create the situation that we're in, and I think that's what a lot of it is about, is people just waking up to that. And it all comes from discovering your personal power. The shift will come, but I believe it has to start with the individual. It has to start with people changing their perspective and applying it to the world around them. It happens, but you have to participate in it. I think there's a lot of people that are waiting for something to just, to wake up one morning and God flicked a switch and suddenly we're all in the fifth dimension. I don't think it's going to be like that at all. I think we have to participate in
it. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Anyway, the fact is we are 2 or 3 days away from knowing. So That's great. We can have a breather in the meantime and just breathe and enjoy life anyway, because we are immortal. So it really doesn't matter if there's a cataclysm or if there's eternal bliss, because eventually we will have eternal bliss. That is our nature, and nature demands this. And the universe is a universe of love. Therefore, it's coming sooner or later.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing about this date has been I'm still a little bit unsure as to what's actually happening as far as astronomically. Like where we are with the alignments. I mean, I'm unsure. I've heard so many conflicting reports about where we actually are and what this alignment means. So I'm unsure as to where we are. But the interesting thing is that if we are indeed crossing the line of the galactic center, like the equator, the galactic equator, I'm not sure if we are, but if we are, that could be really interesting, because that could indicate that there's a reverse in the spin, in the direction of spin of the planet. Because as above, so below. If you look at the way spiral eddies flow in the northern hemisphere as compared to the southern hemisphere, they spin in the opposite direction. The way water goes down the tap anti-clockwise in the southern hemisphere and clockwise in the northern hemisphere. So because it changes its direction of rotation. If you go to the equator with a bucket of water and you put a hole in the bottom of the bucket, and you stand 10 inches above the equator, it goes out clockwise. And if you move it to 10 inches below the equator, it goes anti-clockwise, just in that short space. But if you hold it directly over the line of the equator on the Earth, it falls straight out of the bucket. So there is a possibility that if we are crossing that line, the Earth could stop. Like it could cease rotating and change its direction of spin. That could be interesting. But it's just a possibility, But there is reports in a lot of ancient texts as well where they talk about 3 days of darkness and they talk about 3 days of light. It's just an interesting possibility.
Well, you've just reminded me of what Herodotus wrote 2,500 years ago when he went down to Egypt. And I did read this yesterday on the show, but I'll do it again. It's just a short passage, but you've reminded me of this. Here is Herodotus in the histories, and he's talking about the Egyptian priests were telling him that there's a period of 11,340 years where this change happens in the solar system. Now, 11,400 years is around about half of a precessional cycle. So he goes on to say, they did say, however, that 4 times within this period the sun changed his usual position, twice rising where he normally sets and twice setting where he normally rises. They assured me that Egypt was quite unaffected by this. The harvests and the produce of the river were the same as usual, and there was no change in the incidence of disease or death. Now, this is the passage that a lot of people have stumbled on and just wondered, what the hell does this mean? Of course, the consensus world in quackademia, they will just write that off as just stupidity. Herodotus was drunk. He's just an egocentrical man writing stupid things to get attention to himself. But the priests in Egypt, they kept records and they knew their stuff. And they said that they had records of 4 occurrences where the sun rose either in the east and then went to the west, then back and then back. So, and this is one of those intervals. This is it. It's not only the end of the processional cycle in terms of the finishing line, but there are other bigger cycles that are zeroing in. So it's basically just a birthday party, you know. When we celebrate our birthdays, and this will be interesting to the listeners, when we celebrate our birthdays, we get a round cake and we put a candle on there with a fire on it because we're celebrating what's called in astrology the return of the sun in the same position when you were born. So it returns. So, for instance, my birthday is the 24th of March, and so I was born when the sun was in that degree, the second degree of Aries. So when I'm 1 year old, my parents remember the day, and then they give me one candle to blow out because I'm blowing out the sun for that year. Then I get 2 candles, 3 candles for every orbit. And this is basically a big, big, big birthday cake. What's coming?
Yeah, well, that's interesting. But, yeah, I mean, stories of things like that happening with the sun, I mean, it is possible. But, again, this is if we are crossing that line. I'm unsure as to what this date is, whether it means we are crossing that line. But if we are, there is of course that possibility, and that would be extremely interesting, especially if if resume spin in the opposite direction, you know. So that would mess up a lot of the astrologers, I think, if everything started rising in the other direction. So, but yeah, it's a possibility. You can't rule anything out. But there are other people that say, look, we're simply entering an area where the sun is in alignment with the centre of the galaxy. So. I'm not really sure. Like I said, I don't know much about astrology or planetary movements or anything like that. But there has been reports in the past where the Earth has experienced a couple of days of darkness, 2 or 3 days, and 2 or 3 days of light on the other side of the planet. And that would indicate that it's stopped spinning. I mean, and that would, the only thing that I can think of that would do that would be if it crossed the line of, you know, the galactic equator, the galactic ecliptic. So, yeah, interesting time, Santos, for sure. Amazing that it's here after all these years of waiting for this date and wondering what it was going to bring about. And the energy is certainly palpable at the moment. There's a very, very unusual energy. And, yeah.
You're not kidding.
It's a spectacular time to be alive. I can't wait to see. I wonder when the actual time of the alignment is, because, of course, we have the International Dateline, and it's going to be the 21st of December here a day earlier than it is in the Northern Hemisphere, and the Mayan calendar was found near the equator, I believe. So I wonder what the actual time of the alignment is.
Yeah, I wonder. And I reckon, you know, I've got a hunch, Max, that we need to focus on the original prime meridian, or the original right ascension of meridian that existed on this planet before Greenwich and before Paris, the Great Pyramid. Probably that would be the indicator. And, you know, did you see the alignment on the 2nd of December, just weeks ago, with Mercury, Saturn and Venus, just above the 3 pyramids?
Yeah. I saw a lot of talk about that on the internet, yeah.
Yeah, well, I checked that out thoroughly and researched it, and that was really authentic and ridgy-dig. That did take place. And so, but look, the reason you don't know and I don't know is because no one knows what's going to really, really happen. We know, I've heard talk about 8 minutes of download of consciousness. I've also investigated what you just said about the 72 hours of stillness of the Earth. That has happened. Absolutely, it's happened. And if you look at what geologists know, they know, and I remember reading this when I used to read up on Emanuel Velikovsky 30 years ago, how he would explain that in all the different levels of rock strata, you'll have the magnetism going north-south in the rocks change their polarity 180 degrees several times as you go down in the rock, as you cut into the strata. So you've got one level, for instance, will be pointing north, and then you dig a little bit down deeper, and then the magnetism points south, because all rocks have got some paramagnetic current in them, you see. And so it's measurable, and geologists know this. But you see, they just write it off as, oh, yeah, that was an earthquake or that was a volcano or something like that, and this and that happened to cause it. They don't realise that it has to do with these greater cycles.
Well, yeah, so, absolutely it does. Absolutely, it absolutely does. And there has been recordings of several magnetic reversals of the poles, and there's also been talk that the magnetism of the planet is down below 1% at the moment, and it's due for a flip at any moment. So, yeah, this is all on the cards. It's a very fascinating time to be alive. Like I said, I can't believe that it's here, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what's going to unfold over the next 8 to 12 months from this point.
Yeah. Well, we have determined to make it better, because when you get on the path of consciousness and you continue and do not let up, then you've made a decision which will have a ripple effect, and other people will then follow on. And that's the only way. Be the change that you want to be, as the good old Gandhi said.
Well, yeah, and a lot of people are waking up to the state of the world now, brother. They really are. I mean, what I saw in my travels was fantastic. I saw pockets of resistance absolutely everywhere that I went, and people are absolutely waking up to what's going on, and they're beginning to see the solution as well. And it all comes back to what I was saying before about discovering your own personal power and just starting to question authority, but doing it in the right way. And doing it from, with a united community. You need to have the community standing with you. So you need to break down these barriers.
Yeah, that's the break. You got it. Okay, wonderful. I'm with Max Igan on American Freedom Radio, folks. Stay tuned, because we've got a lot of insight after the break. Thank you. Welcome back to American Freedom Radio, friends. You're with Santos Bonacci and very special guest, Max Igan. And Max, probably more for my own pleasure, I would love to hear the highlights of your trip. You've just recently come from, you've been to South America, you went over to Europe, you went to Gaza, and you made that beautiful video which you did there with Ken O'Keefe. Is that right, Ken O'Keefe? Yep. And very, very encouraging. Would you like to share some highlights with us? And I'm sure the listeners will benefit.
Look, the highlights of the trip were definitely Peru at the beginning and Gaza near the end were definitely the highlights. Gaza was a fantastic, very rich and very rewarding experience. It was fantastic to actually go there and meet the people. But, I mean, the whole trip was good. The people that I met in every country were great. The people in Slovenia, the people in Croatia, all the people that I met in England were fantastic. Met some really, really wonderful people in England, down around southern England, around Brighton, and out at Manchester, and at Zoo Studios in England as well. Really, really fantastic people. I spent some time with Rick Simpson in Croatia and in Slovenia as well. Spoke at the World Hemp Congress, which was kind of interesting. And I did a couple of seminars in Croatia, did a couple of television appearances in Croatia as well, actually on mainstream television. Yeah, that was quite remarkable. Apparently I was quite well known in Croatia, so as soon as I got there I did a couple of radio interviews, and there was a couple of page spread in a newspaper, and it was pretty amazing. Like, there was all this sort of to-do about me actually being in Croatia, so that was kind of interesting. And ended up doing 2 seminars there with Rick Simpson, one with Ben Stewart as well, and another guy called Generic Bayer. So we did a 7-hour seminar in Apatia with Ben Stewart, Generic Bayer, Rick Simpson and myself, which was quite interesting. And but before that, I went to Gaza with Ken O'Keefe. I stayed at Ken's place for a month while I was in England. I stayed at his house the whole time, him and his lovely wife. They were absolutely wonderful to me. They really were. They looked after me very, very well. Gave me a place to stay. Wouldn't hear of me giving them anything to stay there or anything like that. They were very, very supportive of everything.
Oh, wow. Oh, and that's nice.
Oh,
and for the listeners, can you tell... People. Oh, yeah. Can you tell people who Ken O'Keefe is? Because he is a very, very active man in especially when it comes to Gaza and the injustices by this out-of-control criminal Zionist state. It's just murderous. Oh, and by the way, after that, don't forget, I want to talk about Roger Waters' speech at the UN. Did you hear that?
Yeah, fantastic speech. Absolutely fantastic. And it was really good to see what he was saying about Palestine. I mean, the trip into Palestine was amazing, and Ken O'Keefe is a very, very amazing man. Like, he's done some fantastic stuff. He was on the Mavi Marmara that broke the Israeli blockade, the ship that broke the Israeli blockade in 2010. He was in the Operation Iraqi Shield, the human shield operation that went to Iraq when George W. Bush was going to bomb Baghdad. Ken went there with a whole bunch of people. I think there was about 60 people, I think, went in the end. I mean, I may not have the number right, but I think it was around 60 people went in there and basically held space through Baghdad while Bush was carpet bombing the place. People like Ken were at the water purification works saying, you can't bomb here, I'm an American. And they didn't bomb. So while the place has been carpet bombed, they were holding space at strategic points that the people needed to have a viable infrastructure, just so the children would still have drinking water and they still have a hospital and things like this, you know. They still have electricity, the mothers. I mean, there were so many people that suffered during a war, and the invasion of Iraq was illegal anyway. And so these people went in to hold space and in defiance of the US government. And good on him for doing so. So he's done some great stuff. A bit of a loose cannon. Yeah, he's Ken O'Keefe. He's a bit of a wild card, but hey, that's good. You need a wild card in there as well. That's what was sort of good with the videos that I did with him on the Gaza rooftop, because I'm sort of known to be sort of quiet and calculating and eloquent and just sort of calm. And there I am on one side, and then there's Ken O'Keefe on the other side. So I sort of showed the other side of the coin. And we're both very supportive of each other's work. And we just both approach things in different ways. So it was great doing the video clips with him that we did on the rooftop while we were there. There was 2 that we did. There was actually 3 that we did, but I don't think one of them has been released yet. I think Ken is possibly going to release it at a later date. But then there was the short 15-minute film that I did called 10 Days in Gaza, which I just compiled together out of footage of us sort of going there and getting into Gaza and what we did while we were there and how I felt about the Palestinian people. I tried to convey a film that would show the real side of Palestine. I mean, not going in there and saying, oh, look at all this bombed-out family, look at all this terrible, horrible, brutal stuff, and show all the pain of the children and all the things that you always hear about Palestine, but just to go in and show the real people that I interacted with while I was there. We spoke at Gaza University while I was there. I interviewed some of the students, and they were all saying the same thing. I'm learning English because it's an international language, so that way the world will know what I'm saying when I can go and talk to them and say, hey, we just want to be like everybody else. You know, we're not terrorists. We're just normal people. And, you know, I want the world to understand that we just want to be free to be a country like everybody else, because that's the problem with being Palestinian, is that you don't have a voice because you don't belong to a country, therefore you can't get a passport, therefore you're just a surplus human being. And that's one of the really noticeable things about the whole Palestinian and Israeli situation, really, is that what we've seen applied to the Palestinian people within the system that Israel has imposed on the area is an effective method of surplusing and warehousing human beings. And that's what they've done with the Palestinian people. And as we see the carbon tax here in Australia, we see prices escalate. We see people getting more and more dispossessed all around the world. What we're going to see is that Israel has provided with this Palestinian-Israeli system what they provide is a workable model that can now be adapted to any country. This is how you deal with your surplus human beings. So eventually what we see under this system is a global Israeli-Palestinian situation whereby half the world is Israel and the other half is Gaza. That's what we're seeing. And if we're not Gaza, then we'll be the West Bank. We'll just have checkpoints everywhere, and we'll be treated as surplus human beings. So we're seeing a workable model. With the carbon tax here in Australia, we've seen a workable model which will soon be applied to the rest of the world. And what we've seen in Palestine is a workable model which will soon be applied to the rest of the world. See, the problem is that people look at all of these issues separately. But they're not. They're all related. They just try things in different countries and see what works, and then they extrapolate it out towards around the rest of the world. And that's one thing that was really, really noticeable in my time in Palestine is the surplusing and warehousing nature of the whole situation. And when there was a group of people that decided to stand up against it and decided they didn't want checkpoints everywhere, then they besieged them, called them terrorists, and that's what we see in Gaza. And the situation in Gaza, although the place is under siege and the conditions are horrendous, I mean, they haven't got the parts to fix the sewerage. They haven't got the parts to fix the electricity plant, so the power's off from 8 to 16 hours a day. They haven't got the parts to do anything. We're building school desks for children and we couldn't get nails. We couldn't get anything we needed to build these desks. It was just hopeless. You can't get concrete to rebuild the buildings that the Israelis bomb on a regular basis. The only way you can get concrete is to go and get it from the buffer zone, break up old buildings that have been blown up and collect the concrete and take it back and kind of crush it up with a hammer and try to make new concrete out of it. You know, this is the way they're forced to live. And even under conditions like that, the freedom that you have in Gaza is far better than the freedom and the conditions that you're forced to live under in the West Bank, which is virtually controlled by Israel and by Fatah, and is what the people in Gaza basically rebelled against. So it's a very, very delicate situation, but it's one that the world needs to pay attention to, because this is the way the world's heading if we don't pay attention to it. It'll just go out to be global. So, and I think, but that's what this time is, Santos. People are waking up to all this. That's what this rise in consciousness is. That's what this shift is. People are becoming aware. That's what people say. What is a rise in consciousness? Well, it's a rise in awareness. It's you being more conscious of who and what you are and what you need to do. You need to apply yourself to reality by realizing who and what you are. It all comes down to shining that inner light. So I think that's what we're seeing, and all of these situations provide an opportunity for us to do so.
Beautiful, beautiful. And you know, Max, I was just thinking there as you were talking about Israel occupying the land there, and I turned to my right and I've got a book by Shlomo Sands, The Invention of the Jewish People. This guy's a Jew and he's got videos all over the internet. You can check him out, listeners. Shlomo Sand. And he, along with many, many other Jewish people and scholars, have proven that the whole Israel and everything from the Holy Land and the Bible and everything, it's mythology. The race doesn't even exist. The 12 tribes of Israel are Aries, Pisces, Capricorn, Scorpio, Cancer, etc. It's the zodiac. And this is the word, and I've proven this in my presentation. I've shown this. I've demonstrated this with science and facts. And it is absolutely a fact that this monstrosity, which is this occupation, it should never have existed. Because those people that are there, that have occupied that space of land, have removed people violently with a lot of bloodshed just to put people who do not belong there. Those people belong in America, Russia, Europe. Those are good Jewish people, that have a good, long Jewish tradition by virtue of the beautiful Jewish tradition. It's a great tradition. It's fantastic. There's nothing wrong with it. But this Zionist thing, this is something totally different altogether. This is a monstrosity, and it will cease. It will cease.
Well, it has to. I mean, it's doing so by its own hand. That's the thing. I mean, the actions of Israel, and when I talk about Israel, I'm talking about the political entity of Israel, you know, not the Israeli people. And there's a lot of good Jewish people, as you said, who don't like what Israel's doing. And the whole concept of Israel being a country that is been put there basically in place of Palestine is a Zionist concept. Of course it is. That's what Zionism is. It's the idea of setting up a Jewish homeland within Palestine. You can go and read the Balfour Agreement. You can go and read the Transfer Agreement. You can look into all of these deals that were made to bring about the creation of the current state of Israel. But the actions of the current state of Israel with its colonisation program, which it calls its settlement program, not settlements, we're just putting settlements in. Well, hang on, what are these settlements? Where are you putting them? Oh, you're putting them in another country, in someone else's land. And then when the people complain about it, you call them terrorists. And you bulldoze their houses and you treat them as surplus human beings because according to you, the land Palestine doesn't exist. And they created this whole apartheid system within Israel and within all the lands that Israel occupies. And because they're doing it, and they're doing it so blatantly, and it is apartheid, it absolutely is. You've just got to look at things such as the law of return, which states it differentiates between Israeli citizenship and Jewish nationality. And you don't get full rights with Israeli citizenship. You only get them with Jewish nationality. Your rights only come with nationality. You can be a Saudi Arabian and go and live in Israel. That's okay. You've got a nationality. You're Saudi Arabian. You have rights. You can be anybody. Be an Iraqi, go and live in Israel. You have rights. You have a nationality. But you can't be a Palestinian and live within any land occupied by Israel because you don't have a nationality, so therefore you don't have any rights. And the people within Israel, the Israeli people who look down on the Palestinians, they don't understand. They don't know most of this. They don't understand that the Palestinians are treated this way. They just think they complain a lot. Oh, bloody Palestinians. You know, you'd shoot them too if they lived near you because they're always complaining. They don't understand that the Palestinians are forced to live within a system where they have no rights. Therefore, the government can come and bulldoze their houses and say, you've got to leave now because we're putting a block of flats here for Jewish people. You know, because Jews have nationality. So it's that law of return which differentiates between Israeli citizenship and Jewish nationality within Israel that creates this apartheid system. And because this is so blatant, and you see things like recently when Palestine was recognised as a non-member state, which is both good and bad, then what did Israel do? It said, oh, we're gonna knock down more houses and build another 3,000 units, and we're going to withhold all the taxes that we collected for Palestine this month. You know, so you can see what's going on here. You know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you can see through it. The important thing is that awareness of this terrible situation grows day by day. And when we get back, we'll just have a quick mention of the Roger Waters speech at the UN. Very encouraging, folks. So hang in there. You're with Santos Bonacci and special guest Max Igan today. Thank you. Welcome back, friends. You're on American Freedom Radio with Santos Bonacci and special guest Max Igan. And we were talking about, or at least I did, that I would like to talk about the beautiful speech of the great band member of Pink Floyd, Roger Waters. I did see him when he came, probably about 10 years ago at the tennis centre here. It was magnificent, and I have always been, at least since I was a young teenager, a big fan of Pink Floyd. And my favourite album is The Wall. I would listen to that day in, day out when that came out in the late 70s. But yes, I think that speech ranks as one of the best liberating speeches you will ever hear. 20 minutes, roughly, where he clearly and unequivocally denounces the Israeli state and America for supporting such a criminal state, which really is an indictment on this corporate entity called the United States. What a monstrosity, and what a far removed condition that it is from that day when Ben Franklin came out of the the meeting that when they founded the Republic, and the woman asked him, "What do we have?" And he said, "Look, you've got a republic if you can hang on to it, woman." Well, of course, the Vatican came and set up its little corporation called the US in 1881. And far cry from that republic. It's a monstrosity, and it's about the only bully on the planet that will support such a criminal state. So it has a lot to say. It tells a lot about where the US is at the moment, and we need to save this wonderful country with consciousness from this debauched condition of going around bringing democracy You know, he tried to kill my daddy, so we're going to go in there and we're going to kill Saddam because he tried to kill my daddy. And so, you know, hundreds of thousands of innocent people have to perish. So, folks, get on the internet and listen to Roger Waters. He is a really conscious, living musician and a way shower, really. And even their music has always been showing the way. We're not bricks in the wall. We are divine lights of stardust. And please listen to that message carefully, spread it far and wide, denounce this criminal state, and let's get back to some love and some republic and some communities and some giving and joy and bliss. And let's put apartheid behind us. It doesn't serve anybody. So, Max, have you got any thoughts about that beautiful speech?
Oh, no, everything that you just said, you just covered it pretty well there. It was a very eloquent speech and it was very well said. And you've got to understand, I mean, there's a lot of Zionists that exist within American government, and that's why the State of Israel is supported, because that's what Zionism is. It's the establishment of a Jewish state within Palestine. That's what it's all about. But like I was saying before the break, all the recent actions of this state since the UN vote, the way it's even withholding the tax money, and it's decided to build more houses, and it's just going further and further to oppress the Palestinian people. It's becoming so obvious now how biased everything is towards this state, how it gets away with absolutely everything. Broken more UN resolutions than any other state, has been the constant aggressor towards all of its neighbours, and always screaming out victim because of the Holocaust situation. They're always... You know, anybody who speaks out against Israel, it always comes back to the Holocaust. No, we're the victims. We're the victims. In World War II, this was done to us. We're just defending ourselves. We're defending ourselves by eliminating everybody around us, is basically what it comes down to. And it is a legitimate state. I mean, there was an area within Palestine known as Israel where the Jewish people always came from, and that was the birthplace of their religion. But it's kind of like, you know, an area within New South Wales called the Hunter Valley. It doesn't mean it's a different country, you know. It had always been there, and all the Arabs and the Islamic people who lived in the area fully acknowledged that the Jews lived there. They had no problem with them. They lived there. It was all fine for thousands of years until the Balfour Agreement and the Transfer Agreement and the establishment of the State of Israel. But like I said, with everything that Israel is now doing, and it's been being so blatant and so arrogant and so in your face, and the arrogance of people like Benjamin Netanyahu, it's becoming clear to the world and to the people of the world that they can't continue to support. I mean, the people in all of the countries are screaming at their governments to stop supporting this state, and the governments in some sort of a, you know, last ditch attempt to remain decent in the eyes of the people in some small respect are starting to withdraw their support from Israel. So Israel's blatant arrogance will bring about its own demise because of this settlement program. This colonisation program that it's continued to do, it's dispossessing all of the Palestinian people, and it's creating a situation where all it is going to get from the Arab world for decades and centuries to come is terrorism in response to what it has done and how much it has brutalised these people, because every action that it does against these people creates another potential terrorist. Because if you brutalise people enough, eventually they just don't feel anymore, and they're quite happy to strap a pack of explosives to themselves and go and take out as many of these people as they can, because that's the mindset you've created, you know. And you can't blame people if they do react like that. But, I mean, most of the bombings against Israel are staged anyway by Israel in order for it to maintain its aggressive stance. And you've really got to look back and see how the place was founded. Look at the agreement, you know, or the declaration, the Balfour Declaration written by James Balfour and given to Rothschild, where they decided it would be a good thing to establish the State of Israel within Palestine. Look at the Transfer Agreement, the deals that were made between Zionists and Adolf Hitler before World War II in 1933, where Hitler had already started to close down Jewish businesses in Germany because of the damage that these businesses were doing to the German economy. And before that, and because he started to close down these businesses, there was already announcements in papers, I believe, in early 1933 or late 1932, where it claimed that world Jewry had declared war on Germany, and they were marginalising the German economy as much as they could because Hitler had been closing down Jewish businesses in Germany. And so they created an agreement called the Transfer Agreement, where Hitler agreed that the Jews that were shipped out of Germany would be taken down to Palestine. And that was the beginning. He actually financed the creation of Israel, came out of the coffers of Adolf Hitler, basically, if you really look at the Transfer Agreement. So it goes very, very deep, the foundation of this place. And there's a lot of reports that a lot of the people who were collected, a lot of the Jews who were collected during those early years in Germany were not taken to concentration camps, but were actually taken down to Palestine. So it's a debatable issue, but you really have to look at what founded this state, and really it's just an instability mechanism that's being used to create the Third World War that Albert Pike talked about. That's what it's all about. It's there to create the war of East versus West, and it's been a very effective mechanism so far.
Yeah. I mean, they've just, as you say in Albert Pike's talking about unleashing the Muslims and the nihilists, I think he said, something like that. But the reason why that would happen is because the Muslim bloc is a big bloc. So you're not going to get some little group of 30 people that you're going to antagonise and demonise. You want to get a big bloc. So let's pick on the Muslims. They're there. If it was someone else, they'd pick on them, But the fact is that once upon a time, Jews, Christians, Muslims, they all lived in harmony together. What has happened in recent years, probably in the last couple of 100 years, really, has really deteriorated, hasn't it, really? I mean, probably since the Rothschilds started stealing everybody's money back in Napoleon's day. I think it's gone downhill since then.
Yeah. Yeah, it has. Ever since the bankers got involved in it, you impose a system of commerce over people and over the mentality of people, and this is what happens. And basically, all we're seeing is corporate consolidation. There's a lot of resources in the Middle East that people want, and you can't really get there politically. You can't get access to them politically. So the way to do it is religiously. You create a conflict between two belief systems and create a war. And if you've got superior firepower, then that's it. You get all the resources. And that's what they've done. But you've got to justify the war in the eyes of the people. So you have to vilify your enemies. This is why we're seeing such an incredible amount of Islamic phobia and Iran phobia and stuff in movies and things that are coming out now. The bad guys in movies, they're always Arabs. You look at there's a recent film that came out called Argo, which was talking about the Iran hostage crisis that happened back in the 70s. And even the filming of it, even the graininess of the camera and the just the attitude and the energy that it conveys. Yeah, and we're at the top of the hour, and that's gone really quickly, by the way. Well, I hope you're enjoying the show, folks. Hang in there for another hour, and we're going to open the caller lines, so hope you don't mind, Max. I'm sure there'd be a caller or two out there that would love to talk to you and shoot you over a couple of questions. So we can look forward to that, and so back shortly for the new hour. Hang in there. Thank you.
And I see through your brain like I see through the water that runs down my drain.
Welcome back, friends, for the second hour in conversation with a very special guest from Australia, Max Igan. Max, of course, if you're not familiar with Max's work, has been around for best part of a couple of decades, I believe. Max can correct that in a minute, but the website for everything Max Igan is The Crow House, thecrowhouse.com. Now, what you'll find there is if you click on recommended viewing, on the front page of The Crow House, there's a newly released video which talks about It's just newly released too, by the way. I mean, I know there's been quite a few videos about the death of Diana and the conspiracy there involved. But this one, I've only seen half of it yet. I fell asleep the other night watching it, and I'm going to see the other half today. But very, very well put together video. And I do recommend you go on there, click on that. There's a whole bunch of other videos too, by the way. Man, you've got a lot of videos here, Max.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of stuff there that I think people should see. Not all of them, they're not all my films either. These are just films by other people or documentaries that I think people need to watch. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen many of these too. Brzezinski, Cancer is Serious Business. Canada's Genocide, would that be by Kevin Annett?
Yeah, it's interesting. It shows what Canada, what's actually going on in Canada, or what they did to the Indigenous people there. It's very important information.
Yes, I've had Kevin on American Freedom Radio a couple of weeks back, and we actually had a moron that called in that tried to belittle and deride and shut him down basically as a fraud. I mean, I just can't believe it, man. I mean, I get that. I get that. People. I mean, I'm doing stuff like the holy science. This is pure ancient wisdom, and people. I've had people say that I'm a New Age, New World Order, Babylonian, Satanist, Luciferian, misleading people, right? So I know what these creepy people are like. So I just basically shut that guy down. Just a moron. But there's other beautiful videos here. Who Killed John O'Neill? Holes in Heaven, dealing with HAARP and advances in Tesla technology. Great playlist here. But please have a look at this other video on Diana, folks, and spread that one around too, because, well, why would I be suggesting that? Well, because monarchies. Do we need them? Do we need someone jumping up and down saying, I'm better than you, and you're going to have our rule, and you're going to have eugenics and immunisations, and we're going to give it to you the way we want to give it to you. And basically they've just hoarded all the wealth of the world with their bankster friends, comrades, and they've starved another billion people in the last decade. Just in the last decade, if you look at the figures, I mean, another billion people on the planet are doing worse off than, a decade before. So do we need them? No, we don't. And in fact, this video proves beyond any doubt and exposes them as a criminal killing family. Now, I call them baby eaters. Sorry if I offend delicate ears, but I know that they eat babies. And if they don't literally eat babies, which I know they do, and if you don't want to believe that, well, then you need to believe that they kill babies, because they're killers. What they do is offer you one service: to kill you. And we keep these people, and when they ponce around, and they hop on jets and they go to, and they come to, when the Queen comes to Australia, and all these morons with their British flags and, the Queen, she is eating people alive with her doctrines and what she stands for, folks. Well, not she, but their whole creepy system, with Prince, what's her husband's name? I probably do this deliberately because the guy gives me the creeps.
Prince Philip.
Yeah, Prince Philip. If I could come back again, I would come back as a virus to eliminate 9/10 of the world population. Lovely man.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is that Prince Philip is actually a German. He came from a German family and married Elizabeth. But Elizabeth herself actually comes from a German family. So the whole thing is really a German family. But the whole concept of a monarchy, the whole concept of one family, that the line of rule is handed down to, through hereditary. It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous, and they hold so much wealth. And
they have been
Well, all of
been
it was
exposed,
ill-gotten.
mate.
All of it was ill-gotten. All of it was gotten through slavery and opium trading. And if you really look at it, all of the European monarchy, it's all related. It all goes back. You can trace the whole lot back to Egypt even. It's the same line. If you look at the line that usurped the throne in Egypt, way back with, I think it might have been Pharaoh Amenemhet, who I believe was probably the biblical Abraham. And when they usurped the line of pharaohs, it's that same line. That when the Exodus, that line came down, I think it was like Tutmosis III, it got down that far, and then there was the Exodus. And I would believe that Tutmosis III was actually the biblical Moses, who led all the Hebrews out of Egypt at that time. But he was actually a pharaoh when he left. He wasn't a slave, he was a pharaoh, Tutmosis III. That's what my research would indicate, and that it is that line that set up the tribes of Dan in Canaan, the 6 kings, the Vikings, 6 kings, that went over and set up the European monarchy, the line of the 6 kings in the European monarchy. This is the same line that came out of the 6 kings of Canaan, which came out of that Hebrew line from Tutmosis III and Amenemhet, which is the same Hebrew line that came out of ancient Egypt, and that's how it came into Europe, and that's the same line. That's why they brought a German family over there to sit on the English throne, because they just needed the next person in line. And it happened to be a German family because it's all the one monarchy.
Yeah, yep, exactly. And they know the bloodlines, they keep records of it, and they know which is the next pharaoh to sit on the throne to rule the world. But rest assured, folks, this is not the true tradition of ancient pre-dynastic Egypt and the pharaoh. The pharaoh was the humblest man, the wisest man in the land, chosen by matriarchy. It was the wife of the pharaoh that was the real, well, let's call it ruler, but they didn't believe in ruling. They served. And all of the what do you call that? The crozier and the hook that the pharaoh wears, all that is just symbols of humility and service. That was changed, And
Well,
I believe
that was when Amenemhet usurped the line. They broke into the line. He killed the pharaoh before him and imposed himself on the throne. And then over a period of about four or five generations, they basically stole everything and stole the wealth of the country, and they changed the whole line. So that's what my research would indicate anyway.
Yeah, 17th, 18th dynasty is where all the shenanigans started, for sure.
Yeah, and you'll find it there's a book, I can't remember the name of the author, but there's a book called The Book of Abraham, where it talks about the one tomb in Egypt that you are not allowed into, which is the tomb of Amenemhet. And it's theorized, and this man says that there were relics that were found in there, and there are paintings and hieroglyphs on the wall that indicate that Abraham, the symbol for Abraham is depicted on the throne of Egypt, which would indicate that Amenemhet is Abraham. And that's why you're not allowed into that tomb. You're not allowed to investigate anything in that tomb. It's one of the only tombs in Egypt that's you're forbidden to enter.
Yeah, I've just recently released the presentation on this subject, actually, and I've exposed this. Yeah, Syncretism Part 1, The True Theology.
Okay, well, I'm singing to the choir then. Well, you know the story then. So there's every indication that that's who Abraham and Amenemhet is. There's every indication that that's where the line was broken.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it all goes back to there. And I've got some writers like Ralph Ellis. I've got Osman, who now lives in England. He was an Egyptian. He's got a book. He's got Moses and Akhenaten, Jesus in the House of the Pharaohs, the Hebrew Pharaohs of Egypt, Christianity and ancient Egyptian religion. I mean, that's all I'm teaching. I'm teaching exactly that. Christianity is an ancient. In fact, the church fathers like, who have we got? We've got Augustine, for example. He said that there was never a time that there was not the Christian religion on this planet. It has always existed and always will, because it's the science of light. That's what it is. The science, not religion, it's science. And the Egyptians taught this science and how to regenerate the body and make the body grow and evolve so that one can return back to wherever it is we came from, back to those beautiful stars. And so, of course, when this corruption began, the first thing they started doing was defacing the monuments, decommissioning the temples of healing, and they started a campaign of disinformation, which Rome continued down to this day. Down to this day, the Roman elite, which rule the world through the banksters and, and all these cities, London, DC, Vatican, Switzerland, the Bank of England and all these creepy institutions, they are still running the same disinformation campaign where they demonise the astrology that came out of Egypt, the beautiful science, where they demonise those temples and they tell you that the pyramids were just tombs or, grandiose, egotistical memorials for megalomaniac kings of Egypt, etc., that used slaves and all that sort of stuff. What a crock of... Man, that is hocus pocus stuff. And people come out of universities with degrees teaching that crap.
Well, yeah,
Vomiting.
and that's the thing. I mean, something that I saw in Peru as well is the connection to the plants when I did ceremony in Peru. And I saw why all of this stuff was the biggest threat ever to the Crown Corporation. When the Crown Corporation was created back in, all about Pope Boniface and the Unum Sanctum Trust, and that's basically the beginning of this corporate system that we all see, and that's what's been used now to control us. But the biggest threat to that system ever was this type of culture, was the astronomical information and the knowledge of the plant, shamanistic knowledge. And that is why there was such an incredible effort undertaken by the Crown Corporation and all of its minions to go and stamp out all of these indigenous cultures. They went such an effort, an incredible amount of effort. To even talk about paganism was punishable by death. You had the Inquisition, you had all of this stuff that was created from it, all to stamp out all of this ancient knowledge because it was the one threat. Because that's how you disconnect people from Earth. That's how you disconnect people from the energy of creation. Disconnect people from themselves. You've got to disconnect them from the planet that they live on. You've got to disconnect them from the universe that they belong to, right? And you've got to do that by altering their perception. So you can't have any of this ancient knowledge coming into their teachings, and you've got to teach them in a completely left-brain, analytical, mathematical, geometrical version of reality that's all run by certain rules that are all written on pieces of paper, and you have to do it because it's called law. This is what we have. And there's these people, and they're in control, and that's the way it is. And it's all, you're taught to believe that this is how reality is. And the only threat to that, the real threat to it, is all of this shamanistic and astronomical information. Because when you go through shamanistic ceremony and you actually feel the connection that you have to the earth and your higher senses come online and you see what you could actually be if you were living in harmony with this planet, you begin to see what civilization actually is. Civilization is completely unnecessary to human well-being. In fact, it's completely counter to human well-being. Humanity cannot function properly within what we call civilization. All these square corners and rules and roads everywhere and all the stuff that we set up for ourselves, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work with consciousness. It disconnects us from ourselves. It disconnects us from the earth. It disconnects us from the universe. And we're always taught that reality has to function within certain parameters that are provided to us by an education system. So even if we bring down the system, even if we stand up and have a global revolution and pull down all the criminals in government and have mass arrests, as some people suggest we should have, and always keep telling us is imminent. Even if all this happened, it wouldn't work because all we would do would be put new people in place. We'd still have a system. We would still be disconnected from reality. And that's why I believe the best approach we can have to any of this is to realise what our relationship with those who run the system is, and that is a trusteeship. Governments are public trustees. That's all they are. The government isn't real. It isn't a big thing that comes to get you or bite your head off. The government just exists on paper. It's just a set of rules that people wrote down, and we elect trustees to look after ourselves because these rules exist, which are apparently there to ensure that we're all kept safe and secure. But it's gone far beyond that. So we have to realise what this relationship is. This is just a trust agreement. So we have to realise that that's how we can rein government in, is by realising they're just trustees, but we need to stand together as a community to do it, create some dialogue with these people, alert them to the fact that we actually know what's going on now. We know they're just trustees. We don't like the state of the world, so we've decided to change it, And that's how we deal with it, I believe.
Absolutely. Put them in their place. Trustees is what they are. Folks, you're getting some great insights from Max Igan. Hang in there. We have another couple of segments, and we have a caller on the line. We'll go to the caller after the break. Hang in there, caller, and we'll get to you after the break. Thank you.
And that the land that I live in has God on its side.
Oh yeah, for sure, Bob. Yes, Bob, they've all got God on their side. They all kill in God's name. Lord, Lord, didn't we do this? Didn't we do that in your name? And yet I will say to them in that day, get away from me, you workers of lawlessness. I never knew you. So, welcome back, folks. You're with Santos Bonacci and special guest Max Igan. And we have a caller, Max. We'll just go to the caller there if you don't mind. Caller, it's Lisa. Lisa, are you there?
I am. Thank you, Night Star, Santos, and Matt. I absolutely adore both of you. Have found you for years and whatever, and I'm a spiritual rainbow warrior, goddess of light myself. And actually, the reason I found you on a link from another friend in the show tonight, and ironically, I have a question for both of you, if that's okay. It might be a little off topic.
No worries, please.
Awesome. Because all the energy surging in, I felt a really big shift in the last 24 hours and feel like everything's falling away. And I seriously admire both of you. I'm a geek. I studied quantum physics and sacred geometry and blah, 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 blah. And obviously have some kind of pre-lifetime cognizance of certain subjects. And what I find the most difficult right now when our information is needed is that you two have such a gift for taking such complex things and making them simple. And it's just not a gift of mine. And to hear you guys speak about what's going on in the shift, how do I word it? I just felt the necessity to connect with the two of you for some reason, which is very funny because I certainly don't ever need to otherwise do it other than energetically. But I would suppose the question I was proposing to you, how might us Rainbow Warriors connect in a way other than on the radio shows and this kind of a thing and in a vibrational frequency to reach the masses right about now? Or am I just hyper-thinking it and stuck in my left brain once again?
Max.
I think that I've often said lead by example in all that you do is the best thing to do. Bring information to people in an empowering way. Be a pleasure to be around and be all that you can be. I think what we're seeing at this time is a need for people to express themselves and show their inner light to other people. You don't have to call anything in from anywhere else. Everything that you need is inside you. You just have to connect with that and bring that out, bring that into the field. Connect with that energy around you through that energy that exists within you that is connected to it already. You know, it's there. I mean, I've done whole movies where I've talked about, your emotional state and how you're communicating with reality through your emotions at every moment of every day. So therefore, you have a responsibility in what you're thinking and what you're doing and what your emotions are when you're doing it. All of this sort of stuff. This is the best thing you can really do. I mean, that's what I think this period is. It's about bringing your own light out and expressing that to people around you. You can give them information in an empowering way. You don't have to bring information to people in a way that's fearful. You can do it in a really empowering way by showing them the real you, showing them the light that's there within you. That's what I think the best thing anybody can do. And, you know, I've often talked about trust. I've often talked about, you know, your relationship with government. And this, again, all comes down to knowing who you are. Once you understand this, of course, that's what your relationship with these people is, because trust is what your relationship with everybody is. So how much are you in breach of trust with your relationship with other people? How much are they in breach of trust with you? Are you in this sort of a state? You know, do you treat people as yourself in Lakesh? This is why I always say this at the end of every show. That's what all this is about. It's about this self-realization that you have and this light that you have within and projecting that out to the world. So, you know, I always ask myself a question in all my aspects of life is am I the type of friend that I would want to have as a friend? I think that's something that really helps as well. So that's my approach, and I hope that answered what you were asking. But that's to me, because people write to me all the time. They say, "How can I help?" And I say, "Well, you can help by changing your perspective and changing your energetic state, and leading by example in all that you do. That's how everybody can help. You know, that's what I think this is as well, is people coming to that realization."
Beautiful. And I would say, just to add a little bit to that, know thyself, which is going to lead, if you hang in there, Lisa, and continue with the rest of the show, I'm going to ask Max to share with us his beautiful shamanic experience that he had in Peru, because I've often mentioned, not excessively, probably not enough, I think, just to be cautious, but I've often suggested and mentioned the benefit of entheogens. Entheogen, the word comes from entheogen means to infuse with God. Okay, so it's the plants that we have on the planet that, of course, the controlling system likes to label as drugs. Oh, don't. I remember when I was a Jehovah's Witness. Brothers, we shouldn't take any mind-altering drugs. Jehovah will not be pleased. And so you've got all these armies of churchgoers, armies of trained people that think cannabis is evil, you know. All these beautiful mushrooms that give you such beautiful out-of-body experiences, and they bring you straight into contact with reality, expand your consciousness so that you can see how reality really is, and you know, and bring you almost to the throne of the divinity, so you can see what you really are. And that's what entheogen's all about. And we're going to talk about that for the next part of the show. So how would you like that, Lisa? Oh, I've muted her. I don't know how I did that. I'll put her back on. You there, Lisa? No. Okay. Well, anyway, she'll be listening in the background. Thanks for calling. Much appreciated, sister. And Max, please, you had a beautiful experience with ayahuasca. Can you share that with us?
Well, what I found in Peru was I had a really deep connection with the jungle in one particular ceremony that I did. So we live in a very, very toxic environment. And really, that's why I was saying earlier that we don't need mass arrests. All we need is to rein this government in and to change the direction that it's heading, you know, because over a period of a couple of generations, we could detoxify our environment, get the fluoride out of the water, get all the GM foods off the table, get everything back to a natural environment and a natural intake of food, of natural foods. This is what we need. It's the toxification of our environment and the toxification of our food that has caused us to be disconnected from our higher selves. It's caused us to calcify the pineal gland, so we're not experiencing a lot of reality, a lot of that which exists, what you would term outside visible light. We just simply don't know how to decode this information. So what I experienced in Peru in one of these ceremonies was a coming online of a lot of those higher senses, and I was able to communicate with that which exists outside visible light. Literally communicate with the spirit world. I could literally communicate with the plants as I was walking down the path. It was not on a level of language, but it was more like a telepathic communication with all of creation around me. And I was able to experience that through the medium of this ceremony. And ayahuasca, what it is, it's a combination of two things, chacuna leaves and the ayahuasca vine. The chacuna leaves contain DMT, which enables higher senses to come online. But if you were to just consume DMT, you'd have these things happen, these higher senses come online, but you don't know how to decode the information. It's just an onslaught. But what happens by combining the ayahuasca vine with the chacuna leaves, not only does the vine contain an agent which enables you to be able to consume the DMT through your stomach, because normally you wouldn't be able to do that, but the vine contains an enzyme inhibitor which enables you to consume it that way. But it also contains a spirit. They call it the soul vine. And it's a female spirit, and it will take you down through yourself, and it will connect you to the Earth Mother. You say this to people, and these guys, this is paganism, this is Satan, this is the devil, whatever people want to say. You know, they'll label it all these things. They'll say you're communing with the Earth Mother. This is exactly what Christ warned us against. You know, they don't realise that the whole Christian thing is a construct designed to lead them away from this. Because when I experienced that connection with the Earth Mother, I saw how difficult it's actually going to be to turn this system around, and how imperative it is to reestablish that connection that we have with the earth. And then I saw why the Crown Corporation, when it was formed around the 1300s, it went to such an extraordinary amount of effort to wipe out shamanistic tradition. Incredible. More than anything else, it formed the East India Trading Company and the pirates, and the mandate of the pirates was to go out and wherever you find a traditional culture, you decimate it. You just rape the people and destroy their culture and impose our system over their culture. Destroy all of the traditional cultures anywhere you go. And anything to do with the knowledge of the plants, or what they termed paganism, all throughout Europe was punishable by death. You had the Spanish Inquisition. You had all sorts of processes that were absolutely launched against the people in order to wipe out this shamanistic culture. So the question is why? And the reason is because knowledge of the plants, knowledge of these shamanistic traditions is the biggest threat that this system faces. Because if someone was to go and do an ayahuasca ceremony and actually get that connection to the Mother Earth again, I don't know how that person could ever go and fight another war, or steal from anybody, or do the wrong thing, or rip anybody off, or want to support a corrupt system, or profit from anybody, or really want to be involved in any of that side of society at all. It really opens you up to that connection that you're supposed to have. And that's what we need. And that's why, like I said, it's no good having mass arrest, because we'll just pull people down, we'll put another system in place, and we have to re-establish our connection with the earth. That's the big problem. The only way we're going to do that is to realise what our relationship with government is. Like I said before, it's a trust agreement. These are just trustees. So we need to approach them from that level. Say, hey, you guys are all in breach of trust. We as a population have decided that you, our government, are in breach of the trust that we give you, that we grant you, the power that we grant you to operate our infrastructure for us. We're all in a state of hardship. The world's in a pretty bad shape. You're fracking, you're destroying our water table. You've created all this legislation to enable all of this stuff to go on, and you're holding us as the ones that get in trouble if we stand up against it. And yet you're only in a position of trusteeship through the power that we give you. It was even announced by Julia Gillard recently that you're a public trustee. So, you know, if you have a problem with this, go and see the Prime Minister. She says you're a trustee. I think it all falls in line under her as far as I can see. So, you know, you're all trustees. This is how we deal with the situation, you know. Once people can realise this, then we can start reining this government in, and we can start mandating. Mandate that, okay, we the people mandate that you remove all the fluoride from the water. We don't care what your studies say. We, the people, mandate that you remove these things from our environment. Now, you put them there through legislation you created, so now we are holding you accountable, and we're not going to punish you. We're not going to put you in jail. We're just going to make you remove all of this stuff that you've put in place, because you know how it works. You put it in place, so you remove it. If you don't, then we'll hold you accountable. We'll take you down, and we'll put you in jail or do something with you, and we'll put someone else there that will take control of it. But we need to rein this system in, get rid of the toxins out of our environment, and then over about a period of 30 years, maybe 40 years, maybe a little bit longer, we'll have children who are born fully active again. And people that don't even understand or don't even want to believe in a right brain version of reality, will start experiencing one by default anyway, simply as the toxins are removed from our environment, because it's the toxins that's kept us all locked in. And you also see a real need to preserve this shamanistic culture. And I'm going to launch on a mission next year called Full Circle, which I hope to launch halfway through February or maybe in March, which is going to hopefully encompass a lot of places around the world in an attempt to link up all of these cultures, link up all the people from all these places, perhaps try to establish some sort of dialogue with political figures in each of these countries even, just to discuss things with them, just to try to rally support for the people, try to rally this understanding in people, and also help people understand the need to preserve this shamanistic tradition, because it's truly one of our salvations. People have to reestablish this connection that they have with the earth. And that was something that I got out of ceremony in Peru. It is imperative for me to create some sort of a movement, something that can be done to preserve this tradition, because if we lose this, it's very doubtful that we'll find it ever again. So we have to preserve it.
Beautiful. So well said. And always inspirational. Thanks, Max. And we've got one more segment. Oh, yeah. Imagine a better world. And not only imagine, but do something about it. As the lovely caller asked, what can we do? Well, do what you can do best. I'm doing what I made presentations because I'm a researcher, and that's what I do best. I'm not as good as other people in their fields. So what do you do that is good? Do it. Do that, because that's your gift. I'm just doing what I came here to do. And I discovered that really by a lot of process of elimination. You know, I tried different paths. I was a Jehovah's Witness. I was this, I was that. And then finally I've come to this point. And I do recommend for those that are ready to have a shamanic experience, people, it's in the Bible, Ezekiel 3:3. Then he said to me, Son of man, eat this scroll I am giving you and fill your stomach with it. So I ate it, and it tasted as sweet as honey in my mouth. Revelation 10:9. So I went to the angel and asked him to give me the little scroll. That's talking about the Amanita muscaria mushroom, by the way, folks. He said to me, that is St. John, take it and eat it. It will turn your stomach sour, but in your mouth it will be as sweet as honey. Then I was told, you must prophesy again about many peoples, nations, languages and kings. So there basically is John taking a little Amanita muscaria mushroom, and then the angel said to him, it's going to be very, very sour in your stomach, but after you eat it, you must prophesy. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means that your mind will be so expanded that you will have to tell people what it is that you saw in your experience, and you must share it with them because they will benefit from your shamanic experience. And I would just like to add to that, and I've never been backward in telling people the truth, that yes, I do take entheogens regularly, and my presentations are virtually 90% fruit of entheogens, mostly cannabis. And if you want to join some dots and work out how reality really, really is, and you're ready for it, but you must be ready for it. Don't go rushing in, oh, I'm going to go and take this thing now because, oh, it's going to be good for me. No, that's not the attitude. You'll know the right attitude when you have it. And when you do have it, please treat yourself to the higher consciousness. The plants have got wisdom. That's why they're there. Max, over to you, mate. We've got about 10 minutes, and I'd just love to hear your lovely words.
Well, yeah, I mean, the experience that I had in Peru was, as I said, I found a real connection to the earth. Now, I've spoken about this on shows. I've had meditation experiences where I've connected to the whole universe on a quantum field. You know, and it wasn't like a DMT experience or anything like that. It was a real connection to all that is or ever was or ever will be, is what it felt like at the time. But when I was doing ceremony in Peru, there was this one particular moment where I felt absolutely immersed in the earth. And I saw what the real role of humanity is as shepherds of this earth and custodians of this earth. We should be living at one with nature upon this earth. And we have all the means and the ability to do that. And we would do that by default if we could communicate with reality properly. Now, we can't because we're shut down through all the mechanisms I mentioned earlier, all the toxins, the fluoride, the electromagnetic radiation, the GM food, everything that's been done to disconnect us, our left brain education, our loss of shamanistic tradition, all of this stuff that's been done to disconnect us from reality has served to create this whole control grid. But I saw what we could be. And I began to wonder why we ended up this way. Why did we create something as alien to the earth as civilization? It doesn't make any sense for us to have started piling stones on top of each other. I mean, it really goes that deep. And people might really, really question this because they're in this left brain reality and they think, oh, of course, we've got to build shelter and all this. But what I felt when I was in that reality and I was that connected to the earth was that, no, we wouldn't need to build shelter. If we were really, truly connected to this planet, we would be looked after as everything else is that's able to live in harmony with this planet. We'd have our higher senses would be online, which means we would have instinct the way other creatures have. People often wonder, how come animals leave an area before there's a tsunami? How come tribal people leave an area before there's a tsunami? 3 days before there's a tsunami, they'll leave an area. Because their instincts tell them to leave the area. Their instincts tell them that something is about to change. And so, that they know, and so they're able to leave the area. So you've got to ask why we can't do that. Why can't we read the energy around us? And it's because our instincts aren't online, because our higher senses aren't online. That's what I experienced in this ceremonial situation. And so that's why I saw why it's so important to acknowledge these traditions and to preserve these traditions, and why they were such a threat to the Crown Corporation, and why they were such a threat to the system. Because if people can have these higher senses come online, if people can start communicating with reality around them, then all the walls break down, the whole barriers break down. It's really the most important thing that people could do, is to re-establish this connection. And that's what I got from ceremony. And then I was able to go out and look around the world and find all of these different monuments. I was kind of led to all these different places in exactly the right order that I needed to be led to them. And I began to see a pattern, and I began to see what appears to be like almost an ancient computer that was possibly used to create some sort of a schism in human consciousness. And I'm still researching this, so I can't really go into it too much. But, I began to question civilization itself, why we would ever need to start piling rocks on top of one another, why we would need to create monuments such as Stonehenge that have all these astronomical alignments and all this sort of stuff. It's all very interesting that they have them. But what purpose would it serve? Why would we need that? And not only that, the knowledge is that incredible knowledge that it takes to construct something like this. So how would we get that knowledge? Why would we even start looking to gain that sort of knowledge from the heavens if we were simply interacting with our environment as custodians and shepherds and living at one with the earth? Why would we need this information? So I began to look at things in a completely different way than what I might have if I hadn't gone and done ceremony before I commenced on this trip. And I found it really interesting the way the trip led me to all of these particular places, all in exactly the right order that I needed. And because I wasn't going around the world doing speaking engagements, I was actually going around the world just listening to what the world was telling me. It gave me a really interesting insight. And I came home with a real lot to process, an awful lot to process. And then came home and did a talk here in North Queensland in a place called Cairns. I was invited up there by a friend. And I was pretty tired after the trip, but I thought, okay, well, it's an old friend, so I went up there. And then the whole trip kind of made sense to me. and this whole plan for the Full Circle project came upon me for next year. And with this Full Circle project, I really want to try to re-establish an understanding of these traditions in as many places as I can, and try to unite as many people as I can. Really try to bring all the consciousness together. Rally the people of the earth. That's the plan. Bring the earth and bring consciousness full circle back to where we should be.
Beautiful. Any real big revelations, like a big one that surprised you? Because I always get a biggie, you know, and you don't expect it. But, I mean, I always go in with questions, so I get the questions answered. Always, folks, if you're going to do an entheogen, have some questions. Because otherwise you won't get answers, and you'll just be doing what the stupid, you know, experienced and unworthy ones do. You know, they just have a trip to get high. Oh, let's get high, let's do an acid trip, you know, and they're disrespectful to the plant. But always have questions, and there's always going to be some big revelations. How about you there, Max? Did you get something special?
Yeah, well, my question really was how to take things to the next level, how to take the message that I've been bringing to the world to the next level, and really get this out to the people. And it basically, I went through a ceremony where I experienced my death, and truly died and was absolutely accepting of my death. And that really helped in the trip to come. Even when I got into Gaza, when I was crawling through the tunnel into Gaza, there was one period where I looked at the tunnel and wondered whether I was crawling into my own grave, because it was such a remote little tunnel, and it was a little tunnel, and it was well over 1 kilometre long. We were over an hour underground, virtually crawling most of the way through just a dirt tunnel, 50 metres below ground. It was an experience a lot of people probably wouldn't have done, but I looked at it and I was quite nonchalant about it, and it really prepared me for a lot of that sort of stuff. So, yeah, it was a good removal of fear.
Well, we've come to the end, Max. Thank you. Thanks a million, and we'll be talking soon, no doubt. I'll have you back on the show. Take care, my brother. Enjoy the shift. Breathe. Know that you are your breath. Know that you are God's. Know that you are God's becoming. Children of light, children of the sun. And talk to you after the shift on this show. Absolutely enjoy what's coming, because it's good. And thank you for listening. We'll have some more in the next few weeks when we get back. Take care.
Welcome to the world's meeting place. American.
It's practically narcotic.
Freedom.
Oh, yes. I like very much.
Radio.
You're an American institution.
American Freedom Radio.